Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Wealth Clock with Steven Weinstock. I've been investing in real estate for over 20 years. Started off with single family, multifamily. Now I'm investing in private credit. This show breaks down what actually works, what other people are doing in order to gain wealth in the real estate business and other business ventures. This episode is sponsored by Cable NOI, Net Operating Income. Cable NOI helps multifamily owners increase their NOI by uncovering hidden cable and internet revenue, higher NOI without actually raising the rents. Today I have Tim Street. He is the founder of FoolProof FSBO, which stands for sale by owner. Tim helps homeowners treat their primary residence like the largest capital event of their lifetime. Tim, thank you for coming on.
Well, Stephen, I can't tell you what an honor it is to be here. Thanks for having me. And I love the message you're putting out to people these days, especially now when, there's people having a hard time with money all across the country. It's really good that people realize that there's alternatives out there and you can make really smart decisions that are going to set you up well for the future. So thanks for including me here.
No problems. Wow. Thank you so much for the compliment. I appreciate it. Tim, what was your very first job you had, as an adult?
I was going to say I was a paper boy, of course, when I was a young kid in Detroit, Michigan, and then I was a cart boy when I was 14 years old, working at the local grocery store. Boy, I'll tell you what, I've had some hard jobs before, pushing shopping carts through 8 inches of snow in the middle of Detroit. That was not a great one. That was almost as bad as being a dishwasher. But my first job as an adult, I actually went in the Marine Corps out of high school. That was my first, I guess we'd call it a job, and that's where I did a lot of my growing up, was right then and there the hard way. It was the best thing I ever did.
Okay. So the early jobs you had as a kid, what did that teach you about?
Well, we didn't have any growing up, so it was. I'd always get made fun of at school for wearing, shoes from Kmart, and never having like the cool designer clothes that a lot of the kids had in my school. So it was really imprinted on me at a young age that, for better or worse, I think it was a bad lesson back then, which was, hey, work hard so you can afford things to be cool. But what it actually did is it said, listen, you're not going to get anything if you don't work for it. And that was a good lesson to have. And thankfully, multiple things had intervened in my life to where I wasn't out there chasing Lamborghinis. I wasn't out there chasing designer clothes. I mean, dude, I shop at Kohl's. This polo probably cost me $15 and I was using Kohl's cash to buy it. All right. So I'm not a fashionista at any stretch, but I have learned to buy appreciating assets. And that's made all the difference in the world.
How did you get into real estate? So you're in the Marine Corps, you are dedicating your life to our country, our flag, making a modest income on the side, or getting paid for it. But you're in the real world now, or at least in the civilian real world. How'd you get into real estate?
Yeah, it was interesting. I got into real estate because after the Marine Corps, I became a federal air marshal. And after that, I got into the startup space with my friends. Were creating these startup companies that were super exciting. And these were brilliant guys, but they really weren't good at selling. And what I learned about selling was, it's not so much ever convincing anybody of anything. It's about having the tools, the tactical empathy to put yourself in their shoes and understand what they want, what they need out of life, and figuring out, hey, if my solution fits what they're actually trying to get to, I have to talk to them in a way that helps them realize that, because they're going to believe 0% of what I tell them and 100% of what they tell themselves. So by getting them to that equation, we had a lot of success. Anyway, after we were so successful, we had several acquisitions. It was awesome, but I got really tired of living out of a suitcase. And I've got 4 daughters, and at a certain point in life, teenage girls, they need to have a dad in the house. And it was just not going to work for me being at conferences every weekend. So in people are going to start throwing things at the radio when they hear me say this. I decided I want an easier, more calm life. So I decided I would invest in real estate. And boy, was that a rather silly thing to do in hindsight. Don't get me wrong. I'm thrilled that I did, but for me to assume it was somehow easy or less chaotic, boy, what an idiot.
Yeah.
So
A lot of people think real estate is 100% passive income, and it could be in some aspects of it, but most of the time it's not. I remember my first property I purchased was a single family home, and I was still working a corporate job, and I assumed that I could just buy this one house, pay it off over 30 years, and have an extra retirement asset, to sell off when it was time right away. Property management reared its ugly head. I learned right away this is not passive income. Although I enjoyed it, I had plenty of time to dedicate to it. With my corporate job, I was still able to. I was young, I was a kid. Um, Really, after 2 months of collecting rent, I realized, hey, why just one? Why not a second, and then a third, and a fourth? And that's how I got into it. So, what was your first entry into real estate?
I was actually sort of an unintentional landlord, so to speak. I got divorced back in 2018, and so it was just me and these two little girls who I love more than anything in the world. And we had this massive house, and it didn't make sense for us to live in it. But I also didn't want to give it up because it was a beautiful piece of property. So I bought an RV. I parked it off on the side property where nobody could see it, and I actually put the house on Airbnb, and it was a stunning success on multiple levels. Number one, monetarily, it was back during COVID, pre-COVID, and then during COVID. I mean, that thing was just rented out at insane levels. And number two, my little girls got to learn about how to start a business. That there was there's a way beyond a W-2 wage to make your way in this world. And I included that on every step of the process. I even taught them the value of making mistakes. Like I saw them suggest things that I knew weren't going to work, but I let us go down that path anyway, because one of the things that I don't love about schools today is they kind of teach kids that making mistakes is horrible, and it's terrible. It's the end of the world. And actually, I've learned some of my most valuable lessons from the big mistakes I made. And a lot of times, as I'm sure you've seen before, Stephen, a lot of times when you're successful, all it does is confirm artificial biases that you might have had. And then you continue to go down a path, and then a big mistake, and then you're like, oh God, I'm such an idiot. So that's how I got into this. And then after that, I decided to really go, like you said, if not one, why not two, why not three? And in the process of doing that, I realized that the work product I was getting out of most real estate, in fact, all the real estate agents I had worked with, was substandard to my expectations. So I spent a weekend, took the class, became a real estate agent, and I started investing in my own properties with myself. And that was a great life hack, to be honest with you. I was able to get right in the door, not having to go through an intermediary. I was able to negotiate my own intentions directly with the seller. It was fantastic.
Yeah, when I started out and I was buying those first few years, I was using a lot of seller financing. And, I would see two family houses, three family houses with a broker, and then I would make an offer. And a lot of times my offer never made it to the seller because either the broker, the real estate broker agent didn't know what seller financing was, or they thought it was some sort of scam, or they just thought, hey, this might affect my commission somehow. I'm not going to even bring this. And I found that the brokers, the agents, were really big gatekeepers. Later on, I learned to prepare a document, an LOI, and make two offers: lowball offer, cash, or with financing, and then a second offer that offered seller financing. And I sort of knew that my first offer would probably be rejected, but it sort of allowed the broker or the agent to now give this document to the seller, and the seller would see both of them, and now that would open the conversation. And I had a lot of success that way. And in the early years, I bought a lot of property using seller financing. Back then there was a lot of seller seconds. A house was going for 100 grand. I'd be able to get a loan for 75 or 80, and the seller would hold 10%, 15%, sometimes 20%, for a short period of time. And I bought a lot of property that way, especially pre 2008. And it worked out for me very well. And it really taught me a lot. And I've used that seller financing knowledge, creativity into my larger multifamily deals that I'm doing. I know if someone's selling a $10 million property, I'll always ask the seller, stay in somehow, either as an LP investor, keep some money in the deal. And I always love having the sellers remain in the deal, not just because it makes the equity portion a little easier, but because it gives me like a historical advantage, knowledge of the property, and they're now my partner. It always boded. It always meant well when a seller was willing to stay because they had confidence in the property itself. So that always worked out. And you mentioned about schools not teaching about mistakes. I agree with you. Schools, obviously, there's tremendous problems with our school system. They don't teach about money. They don't teach about credit score. They don't teach about investing. It's all about just knowledge so you can get a W-2 and, be a solid citizen. And you mentioned mistakes. One early on, one of my investors asked me, I don't want to hear about your successes. Tell me about some of your mistakes. And it
Yeah.
really like threw me for, because I had this whole script prepared of, this success and that success. And I must have said it, 20, 30 times to other people. And he really got me thinking like, oh, wow, mistakes. Am I embarrassed to say it? Or, and now I sort of embrace it. And part of my script, so to speak, is mentioning some of the mistakes and how I overcame it. If I didn't overcome it, it's a conversation, but I definitely agree with you over there. So tell me about your company. You're the founder of a company called FoolProof FSBO. For everyone out there, FSBO stands for For Sale by Owner. I remember the first time I saw the term FSBO. Again, when I started in real estate, it was 2001. It was really like pre-internet in terms of real estate. And like on these message boards, I would see FSBO, and I never knew what it meant. And it took me a while to figure it out. But I think now everybody, with everything online, and we have all internet language and acronyms and stuff like that, FSBO is a regular word. But tell me about Foolproof FSBO, how you got into it, what you're doing, etc.
Yeah. First I have to say something that was like, I think probably how many years? 7 years of multifamily investing advice in about 30 seconds that you just gave. I absolutely am so enamored with something you said, which is having somebody stay on in the deal. It means they're not running all the way to the bank saying, "Ha ha, sucker," and then leaving the country. It's such a great comfort level to know that you bought an asset that they still believe. So number one, kudos on that. And number two, it's just so smart to let people think out alternatively like that. Because right now people think, oh, in order to buy a house, I have to come up with 20% down, and then I have to go through underwriting. I have to go, and you're like, no, you don't. No, actually, here's the life hack. So I'm glad you're spreading that message. It is so important, especially these days when people have a difficult time selling, which they are right now, by the way. They're hitting the 40% of the market that has a W-2 job. They're ignoring the 60% of the high earners out there who maybe are commission paid, or maybe they're self-employed. So they write everything off and they look like a terrible investment on paper. But in reality, they're much more financially disciplined than my neighbor, the plumber who gets a W-2 job. So yeah, kudos for you on that. So as far as what I do at Foolproof FSBO, I teach homeowners and investors how to sell a home the most efficient way possible. And right now, I'll tell you, one of the least efficient ways possible is to use somebody like me, a real estate agent. And here's why. Number one, I don't know much about your home, whereas you are the subject matter expert on that house. You've maybe woken up in that home, you've gone to sleep in that house, you've replaced the bathroom, you've worked on the tile, you've watched 4th of July fireworks from the backyard. You can tell stories upon stories about that property. I, on the other hand, as a real estate, I walk through that house 30 minutes and I say, cool, nice countertops, let's get this thing on the market. The second thing that people have to understand is it's not just a question of commissions, because if that's all it was, I would tell you that actually the majority of the time it is better to sell with a real estate agent, because the commissions aren't insanely that high when you realize the work that they're doing behind the scenes, which I used to think was nothing until I became a real estate agent. I realized, wow, there is a lot of work to do. There's kind of like my misperception about being a real estate investor. There's a lot of work that goes into it. Sure, there are some out there who don't do what they're supposed to do, and they definitely leave a bad reputation for the rest of us. But the reason you should be able to every bit as good, if not better, than a real estate agent selling your house is not only the subject better, but you're going to be more efficient. You're going to have less time on market, which means less carrying costs. You're going to be able to execute on the opportunity that you're going into. So that means less opportunity costs that you can't get involved in. And here's the big thing that very few people think about. As an investor, I know that every dollar I have is leveraged. Maybe it's 5, 10, 100 times what it is. So if I'm able to save $30,000 on a sale, it's, as a retail guy, moving to my next, sure, maybe that's a down payment on the next house. Maybe it's a kitchen remodel. I don't care. But as an investor, that's maybe 3, 4, 5 other houses that I've leveraged 100x on that money that I'm able to now get involved in, all because I didn't take the default route and use a real estate agent. So that's really what I try to get through to people is there's a whole new world out there that, and people think it's difficult. It can be, but when you follow my system, a step-by-step process, if you're a real estate investor, my God, you have all the qualifications in the world plus some to be able to sell your own properties.
Yeah, I feel that when it comes to real estate investors, there's a lot more FSBOs going on than with homeowners. That's just my little sample size that I see. I'm sure you could speak more to that. With your company, are you targeting or dealing more with real estate investors or homeowners themselves, or is it just a mix?
It's really is a mix because the message to both groups is radically similar. I would just say that when I talk to my fellow real estate investors, I become a little bit more passionate about it because of the leverage question. It is so much more advantageous for us to save $1 on a liquidation than it necessarily is for my mom and dad, who are lovely people. They're retired. They're just going to take that money and maybe roll it into a 401k. Okay, that's fine. But my fellow investors are going to take that dollar, multiply it by 100, and have $100 of buying power into their next project.
Do other real estate agents hate you when you meet them and talk to them?
It's funny. The insecure ones who are, yes, they do. The real professionals. So my wife is a real estate agent. My best friend up in Detroit, he's a real estate agent. Bobby Neely, he every year donates thousands of dollars every year just to get school kids backpacks. Like, these are really, really fine people. And we as real estate agents have a big reputation problem because, a lot of times the bottom 10% in any organization tends to be the loudest. And so you have all sorts of people out there kind of making people feel that real estate agents are out to get them, that they're just trying to get an easy dollar. And yes, 100%, everybody's guilty of that to a certain degree. What I will say, though, is when I speak to real estate investors, real estate agents, or homeowners, they all will admit that sometimes this is a good idea. And I'll be the first one to admit, by the way, Stephen, that sometimes selling your home on your own could be the stupidest idea. I'll give you a couple of examples. Number one, if the home is subject to any kind of a legal procedure, let's say it's in the middle of a divorce, or there's an estate, like a probate function, or perhaps there's a judgment against a home, do not try to sell that home yourself. Write that check to that real estate agent and laugh your butt off, because they're going to go through legal hell for you trying to get that thing sold. Another reason that wouldn't make sense is, I don't know, you're a cardiologist and you're making $30,000 a day. Do you really going to listen to a guy like me say, hey, Chuck, go ahead and take the week off work so you can save $20,000 in commissions and sell your house yourself? Obviously not. So there are certain circumstances where it doesn't make sense to sell by owner. But the really good real estate agents out there, the ones who are at the top of their game, understand a couple of things. Number one, a lot of people go out to sell by owner and they ultimately fail, and they need a soft landing. And the best way to give somebody a soft landing is to not sit there the whole time and say, hey, you'll never do this. You'll never be successful. I'll be here when you fail. That is such stupid advice to give to people. Give people the opportunity to succeed. And if they succeed, pat them on the back. And if they can't, be there for them when they fail. So the good real estate agents, they tend to love what I'm doing because I'm giving people a soft landing and a path to ultimately get to a real estate agent who cares. But the ones that are very short-sighted, they have that scarcity mindset. They think I'm somehow taking food out of their mouth. And it's like, I got news for you, pal. Those people were never going to use you anyway. So don't be mad at me. Work on your own game.
What do you think of like Zillow and these websites now that are not just a listing service anymore, but they're sort of getting involved in more aspects of it? I spoke to a relative of mine. She was older. She is probably now about 70, but I spoke to her about 5 years ago. And I asked her about, Zillow, and she said, oh, she hates it. I said, why? She said, we used to be the gatekeeper. The MLS was ours only, and no one could see it. It was really proprietary. It used to be easy. We just get a listing and we put it on the MLS, and now all the buying brokers have access to it. But with Zillow, I'm getting calls from tire kickers. I'm getting calls from, people just looking at it online. People see more product. I want to show this house to a potential homeowner, but they're saying, oh no, I saw, two others on Zillow. Granted, this relative of mine was from an older generation. Real estate agents today, do they like all these Zillows and realtor.coms and all that? Does it help them? Does it hurt them? Do they think Zillow is encroaching on them? I don't know. What do you think?
I think they do. I think they do have a distaste for Zillow. And there's a number of reasons for that. One of the things I would respectfully say to your relative is, I'm sure there were lots of folks who were making horse buggies who were rather angry at Henry Ford when he came out with the Model T, but that's progress. And to sit there and lament for the old days where we were able to gatekeep, that's not a good answer. The market is always going to find its way around inefficiencies. And like it or not, real estate agents have been, and in some circumstances continue today to be an inefficient means of getting the job done. As you experienced yourself, Stephen, how shameful is it that you could put together an offer that truly would have benefited a seller better than any offer they got, and it wasn't even presented to them because the real estate agent didn't understand seller financing? That happened to me. When I would represent, so I do understand seller financing, and I'm a huge fan of it, especially in these days when interest rates are so high and it's so hard to get approval from the ridiculous underwriting standards. I had a person, their house was sitting on the market for like 6 months. They gave up on their old agent. I called him up and I gave him a new plan. And again, he was one of these people that just said, I need 500K for this house. Listen, first things first, the market doesn't care what you need for the house. It doesn't care what you want for the house. It doesn't care that you've got 4 little girls in college next year. They don't care. The market cares about comparison shopping. And if it can find a 3-bath, 2-bed, 1,800 square foot house in this neighborhood at a cheaper price than yours, it's going to get first priority. And I'm sorry, that's the way the world works. But this guy had this house sitting on the market. Well, I had an investor come to me and they offered full price, but they had to carry the note for, I think, 3 or 5 years, something like that. It was such a great deal for this guy. And he wouldn't go for it. He would not. He was like, no, I can't do that. I can't. I'm like, he didn't need the money. He didn't, it's not like he needed all of that money to pay for his next house. He just he felt it was risky. So he ended up taking a deal. I want to say his house was maybe worth 400 and he had it listed at 5. I think he might've ended up taking 380 for it when he could have had 500 full price. It was frustrating. But anyway, real estate agents are never going to be as efficient as going directly to the seller or directly to the buyer. And that's the nature of the game. I don't like gatekeepers. I don't want to be one. And that's why I'm kind of taking what I do. I just give it away for free now. I give it to everybody. I'm just like, here, use my system and let's get it done.
I used to drive around certain neighborhoods. I guess they call it driving for dollars. And I was looking at for sale signs, for sale by owners. I would quickly write down and call if I saw a house with a real estate broker agent sign on it. And when I first started, I was sort of loyal to my one broker. So I would see a house that, said a different broker's name, and I would say, okay, tell me about this house, etc. And after being in the business a while, I realized that the listing broker, who basically controls the deal somewhat, would be a little, I hate to use the word selfish. And if they have two offers, if the listing price is 500,000 and they have an offer from a different broker at 500, or if they have an internal offer at 500, they're going to take theirs and they might not even present the other one because they don't have to split the commission.
Yep.
Sometimes, the house can be listed for 500. They'll have their own offer at 490, and then from another broker at 505, and they still might not present it because I control the deal. I know the buyer. I'm in control.
Yep.
And it got to the point where anytime I saw a property for sale, I would only call the listing broker.
Right.
I would bypass my own broker. I feel bad, but I want the deal. And I was just calling all these signs and, making my offers directly with them. And I just felt it, I guess once you're the listing broker, you're sort of a gatekeeper into the deal. It definitely, I won't say ruined my relationship, but it just dissolved my relationship with my existing brokers that have brought me deals in the past.
Yeah. It's and you shouldn't necessarily feel bad about it. I mean, it's not like, we live in the real world and we understand that everybody's incentives are going to be aligned, not necessarily parallel to each other. So, when I see people trying to work around market, I mean, hell, Steve, that's why I got my license. I don't know how much more disloyal I could be then, because I was so bad that I was like, I dislike all of you so badly, I'm going to become one of you. It was just funny, but as you saw, I mean, you saw this yourself. You actually had to start preparing your own marketing sheets. We're like, I'm going to hand them to it, which is genius, by the way. You say, I'm going to make this so simple that even the real estate agent can't pretend they don't know what the benefit is here. So like doing things like that, there's people who are going to lament that, hey, this world is unfair and boy, all these hoops we have to jump through. Or there's going to be successful people who have made mistakes in their life. They realize coloring outside the lines is okay. And they're going to say, listen, I'm going to get this deal done come hell or high water. I'm going to get my point across. And the only reason that this deal isn't going to work is not because the seller didn't know about it. It's just because they didn't like it, which is totally acceptable. That's a fine outcome, much more preferred than this agent who, in my opinion, they're committing malpractice by not even presenting the deal in the first place.
When I used to look for deals, on the 1 to 4 space, I would look at listings that were nearing their 6-month mark.
Yeah.
Typical agreements were 6 months, and I would, find the owner's number somehow. Probably like 2 weeks left, and I would say, "Hey, I'm an investor in the area. Driven by your property a few times. However, I don't like to deal with brokers." That was what I said. I didn't mention because I want to save money. I just don't like to deal with brokers. If your deal expires, I see it's been on the market for a long time. Here's my number. I'm definitely interested, and it's a numbers game. And here and there, I was able to get them to call me back and able to buy some deals
That's
really
awesome.
at a discount, saving
Yeah.
the 30, 40, whatever it was on it, because the broker was out of the picture. In New Jersey, which is primarily where I buy the one to tours, the brokers, the agents have a very large role in the closing. I live here in New York. I'm born and raised in New York City. And when I bought I'm not really an investor here, but I happen to own some stuff here. And the brokers here are really almost like hands off. It's really all the attorney that deals with everything. And in New Jersey, it was like the broker dealt with everything. The attorney just showed up, to get paid and look over the contract, and that's it. It was the brokers that really just handled everything. I believe the real estate agent broker course or test in New Jersey is much, much tougher than New York. I think for that reason. That's just some of my history. What does your company, Foolproof what do they actually give sellers that maybe they would never normally see on their own?
Sure. So one of the things I like to do is remind people that regardless of whether you need to work with a real estate agent because of your circumstances of your home or the circumstances of your personal lifestyle, whether you do that on your own or whether you don't do it on your own, we're still going to save you tens of thousands of dollars. So the first thing we give homeowners and investors is clarity. I want you to know exactly what you're giving up by selling with an agent. And sometimes you're not giving up hardly anything at all, and it makes sense to sell with an agent. And sometimes you're giving up so much more that you didn't even realize, in which case it does make sense to sell on your own. Like I think of folks like my parents again. I bring them up because they're amazing people. They're retired. My dad still mows his own lawn. He's a bigger man than I am. And, they love DIY projects. They'll build a deck off the back of their yard for fun. They're in their 70s. They're crazy, but like they're so motivated and so cool. They will sell by owner every single time that it's been given an option because they're capable. So I give people like that clarity, but for those who go through and they find out, hey, listen, I'm not set up for this. What do I do now? I still have the option for them. I actually have a network of real estate agents across the country. I've pre-negotiated their commissions down. All I'll do is I'll say, hey, Bob, this is my friend Steven. He's got a house he wants to sell. Please take care of him. And Bob's going to still sell at a reduced commission, full service listing. So whether you sell by owner or sell with an agent, if it's one of my agents, you're still going to save tens of thousands of dollars. Either way you go. And the best way to figure that out is my website is foolprooffsbo.com. That's foolprooffsbo.com. And you go /quiz. So foolprooffsbo.com /quiz. I created, it's like a 2-minute, 7-question quiz. And it's going to tell you the brutally honest truth. Hey, you're a great candidate for doing this on your own. Click here to find out more. Or, hey, this is not the right spot for you. Here's why, but we can still help you. And that's where we send you through the agent route.
That URL is a great URL. Was that available just when you were searching for it, or did you have to buy?
I didn't have to buy it. Yeah, I was very fortunate.
Wow. Okay. So let's go back into your business for a second. So just walk me through it for my audience and for myself. I own a house, a 2-family house. I am an investor. I'm not a homeowner. This is, I'm a mom and pop investor, as they say. I don't want to pay a commission. I want to do it myself. I find this podcast and I reach out to you. Could be with some of the steps. What's my next few steps? Go ahead.
Yeah, the very first step is just either take the quiz, which I think is probably going to be the best thing for you. After you take the quiz, we're going to be in touch and we're going to say, hey, it looks like you were a good fit for this. Click this button to learn more about our program. And the program we have, and actually I'll say this up front, I legitimately do give this away for free. I was a great real estate agent. I got my sellers above asking price every time we tried selling. We were usually off the market in the first weekend. And I was that way because because of my background in the startup space. I had to learn negotiations and putting deals together. It was a boiler room type of situation. It was a lot of pressure. But because of that, I approach the market far different than any other real estate agent does. We almost always had bidding wars on our properties. And it was not because we had prettier photos or we used more flowery language. It's because we understood consumer psychology. And I understood the best way to get a crowd in front of a bar is to put a velvet rope across it and make it exclusive. And that's what we effectively did with our homes. We made them hyper exclusive. You had to really work hard to get a showing. You had to be there we had 2-hour slots for open houses. And I mean, it was chaos in the driveway. People were fighting over parking. There was people like squeezing past each other in the hallways, which is what I wanted. When you do this right, if you've ever had a child and you see two of them fighting over a toy that's been completely ignored in the closet for the last 6 months, it's because there's one thing and they both now want it because they saw the other person want it. And guess what? We didn't outgrow that. We're all babies inside still. And so we will still start emotionally bidding and pursuing an asset when we see other people are interested in it. So I teach that. I teach my investors and my homeowners today how to make your home exclusive. How do we spike interest in it? How do we strategically underprice it in a way that it gets bid back up beyond what you wanted for it in the first place? We're effectively hacking consumer psychology and getting people to overpay for the house. And by teaching people how to do that, not only are we selling faster and for more money, we're allowing people this tool that they're now going to have for the rest of their life. So every other time they're going to liquidate out of a real estate asset, whether it's my mom and dad who might do it 1 or more 2 times in their life, or a real estate investor who's got a portfolio and he's swapping it over every 7 years or 5 years, whatever, he's going to be able to do this forever. And that's what gets me the most exciting. It's the ripple effect of what we're creating in the back end.
Your company, is it a flat fee? Is it commission based? What's your pricing structure?
Yeah, there's absolutely no commission. If people want to learn how to do this, they can do it for free. Just go on my YouTube channel and watch what I do. Now, Steven, I do have people who say, Tim, I don't have time to binge watch 100 hours of YouTube channel. I need a course. For those people and for one-on-one coaching with me, I built a blueprint. It's $397. And it comes with the can't lose guarantee. And the can't lose guarantee says this: if you buy my course, you put your house on the market and we don't sell it by owner, not only do I refund your money, but I also then, once again, at my expense, go through, find a real estate agent in your area. If I don't know you have one, introduce them to you. They'll list it full service for you and they'll get you sold at a drastically reduced commission. So that's kind of my guarantee. You just literally cannot lose with this.
Wow. Okay. Tim, outside of real estate, what do you do? What do you do for fun?
Man, I'll tell you, I've remarried. Liz and I now have 4 kids. And so my entire life is just being I'm so blessed. I get to be home with my kids. My oldest girl is now in college. She's a mechanic, ready to be a mechanical engineer. And then, my younger one, she's already the team captain and the MVP of her swim team as a sophomore, and she's swimming varsity swimming. She's amazing. My next little one, she's into volleyball. The next little one's actually, she's thinking she's going into theater. So, I mean, we've got a crazy house over here, but this is literally my life. I mean, I joke around. Even the dog is a freaking girl in this house. I am so outnumbered here, dude. But, yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful life. I spend every waking moment I can just being thankful for this beautiful life that God's given me and that I have this amazing family that I get to watch grow in front of my eyes. That's kind of where I am. Motorcycles, airplanes, boating, all that stuff is fun. I'm into all of it, but when it comes down to it, my happy spot is being at home with my wife and kids.
What's one number sellers should care about more than price?
Oh God, that's a great question. A lot of people, when they see offers come in the front door, and I think you kind of touched on this earlier, Steven, they get fixated on the top line number, like how much am I getting? But what you have to realize is there's contingencies with every offer. So a $490,000 cash offer that's going to close in 7 days is far more valuable than a $510,000 offer that's contingent upon the buyer selling their existing home first. And oh, by the way, they have to get approved for financing. And oh, by the way, so the number that most people should be concerned with is definitely not necessarily and only the offer price. There's a lot of numbers that go in behind that. And that is so important to be cognizant of, because like I want people to think about, if it takes an extra 60 or 90 days to sell a home, and let's say you're carrying costs for mortgage, insurance, utilities, let's just call it $2,500 for easy math. That's $7,500 out the window that you will never see again because you chose to take what you believe believed looked like a higher offer, but in essence, because it took so much longer to close, it actually you ended up losing or maybe breaking even on it. And so that's a great thing to keep in mind. Don't just get fixated on that top number. Figure out what they're actually saying throughout the rest of the offer, and then make sure you're comparing apples to apples.
And you're not busy with the kids, busy with work, busy with voting or motorcycling. Watching any good TV or any great TV shows or movies. It could be old. What's your favorites? What have you binged in the past? If we were having a beer together, what would you tell me to watch?
Man, my favorite movie that I must have seen, there's two I've watched over and over and over again on repeat. The Big Lebowski is one of my favorites.
Sure.
And Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I love those two. And then, there's some other outliers out there that I just think were cool from a weird perspective, like Magnolia, Vanilla Sky, No Country for Old Men. Like those were all cool. But and then pretty much any Tarantino movie. Yeah, I'm gonna watch that as well.
Yeah, Magnolia was pretty good. I saw Fear and Loathing at the theater. I remember
Wow.
Yeah, I remember at the time I didn't like it, but I saw it afterwards on cable, and obviously it became like a cult classic.
Same. Same thing. I the first time I saw it, I couldn't. I was like, this makes no sense to me. And then it took a couple times, but yeah, wow.
At the time, I never heard of what was his name? It's based on I forgot his name, the writer
Hunter Thompson.
Hunter Thompson. At the time, I never heard of him. I was a kid. I guess when did the movie come out? Maybe in the year 2000, give or take. Maybe late 90s, but for the most part, I was a kid, so I didn't know who he was. I think I found out about him afterwards, but definitely a good movie. I guess last question: what's the worst advice that you hear constantly?
Oof, gosh, it comes from my parents' generation, which hurts me to say because I love my parents so much. The generation, the time and age that my mom and dad, they graduated high school in 1970, and they grew up in a much different world than guys like you and I did. And so the predominant advice back then from my very well-meaning parents, and their generation in general is, get good grades in school, study hard, go to college, get a job. If you do that in 2020, you get good grades in a school, you probably haven't learned much. You've learned how to regurgitate information, but you probably haven't done much learning, and there's a difference. If you go to college for a degree that you probably don't need these days, you're now $110,000 in the hole after 4 years. And now that the government owns that student loan, there's no bankruptcying your way out of it. They're going to pursue to the end of the world. They're going to garnish your wages to pay that back. It's a bad day for you. And so my parents mean well when they say things like that, but that's some advice that I kind of try to have to counter with my children today. And I say, listen, everybody who tells you that, they want to see you succeed, but they did grow up at a different time than we do. And here's the reality. And I'm a lot more realistic about things. I think where it's not necessarily, no, there's nothing wrong with good grades. There's nothing wrong with studying hard. And I love the habits that it establishes, but it used to be that you just got good grades for the sake of having a 4.0. Well, now it's far more important to walk out of school with a 2.0, but being understanding of how to actually build real wealth, real success, balance a checkbook than it necessarily does to have great grades.
I agree. I'm I have college age. One of my kids is college age, and I'm conflicted. It's hard for me to tell them, hey, it might be a waste. It's one thing you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, but just to go.
Amen.
There's almost like, I guess, an education bubble these last 30, plus years. It used to be a manager at Walgreens. 30 years ago, you needed a high school diploma and be a decent person. And because education became so easy to attain, now they make you have a college degree to be the manager of a Walgreens, let's say. And I'm just picking Walgreens.
Yeah.
Now, the job didn't change, and there's nothing you're really learning in your English lit class at community college that helps you with the job. But since college became so easy and it's so out there, and there's so many loans and grants that just make you almost waste your time going.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's the HR department's way of just weeding out, I hate to use the losers, so to speak.
Yeah, it's true.
It's like,
yeah.
It's the same thing almost. Oh, you didn't graduate high school. It could be 60 years ago. You didn't even need the high school diploma to be the manager of a grocery store. But just because it becomes so easy and it's so, they just assume you're a loser if you didn't graduate high school and you didn't graduate college. And I know with some other degrees, it used to be, the undergrad degree was enough. And now it becomes the master's and then becomes a PhD. And it's just constant. And really what it delays this person from like getting into the real world, where
That's it.
someone getting to the real world at 18, making a decent wage might be better off having that 5 years of work experience before him. So by the time he's 25, he's, ahead of the game, instead of somebody with great grades in, English literature coming out of college at 25, he's in debt. What's he going to do now? Get a starting job. So yeah, I'm very conflicted about that.
Yeah. I mean, I had the same conversation with my kids. I was like, look, if you're going into a field, law, medicine, engineering, something where you actually have to have a degree, I'll support you 100%. But if you want to start a business, do not go get an MBA. Start a freaking business and fail, and start another one and fail 7 times. And by the time you hit number 8, by the time you hit number 10, you are going to have done that within 19, 20 months. Your friends will still be, your peer group will still be at school taking Spanish 101, and you're learning about profit and loss. You're learning about tax rules. The best way to start a business is to start and fail at 10 of them. And then it has nothing to do with an MBA. And I'm not discrediting anybody's college out there. God bless you if you went to school and you went on to do great things. Good for you. I love it. But I know from my own experience, and I know from watching other people do it, it is very, very hard to get a good start in life when you're 6 figures in the hole and you're starting with 0 experience at the age of 23. That is just a real, real tough sell these days.
Yeah. Tim, this was a great conversation. For everyone listening, tell everyone how they could get in touch with you: email, phone number, website, social media. I'll put it in the show notes, but tell us.
You're the best, Steven. So again, folks, go to foolprooffsbo.com/quiz, take the temperament quiz. Now, for my investors out there like me, I actually have an investor power pack I built especially for us. So if you go to foolprooffsbo.com/investors, it tells us about what does it mean to actually sell by owner? What does it mean to take full control of your sale? You can follow me on all the socials. Again, all of my handles are very simple. It's Foolproof FSBO. So on YouTube, Foolproof FSBO. If you go to Facebook, I'm Foolproof FSBO. Check me out on there. I publish everything I do for free. You don't ever have to pay me a dime. I'm thrilled to help you though. Reach out to me, email me, contact me through those sites. If you ever find yourself in a scenario where if something doesn't sound right, it doesn't fit right, give me a shout. I help everybody. This is literally what I do full time now.
All right, Tim. Thank you very much. Thanks for tuning
Thanks,
into the Wealth Clock with Steven Weinstock. Like, subscribe, share, and reach out if you know someone else who should be a guest. Tim, adios.
Adios. Thank you, sir. Have a good one.